All is good, everybody. Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. This week on the podcast, the one and only Jem Cooke. Jem is singer-songwriter, has written many hits over the years. And if you don't know who she is, then you've been under a rock for God knows how long. But records with Camelphat, Hot Since 82, Hannah Lang in the recent years, and is also working on her own project. Had records with Jess Bays, Sam Divine. I literally like everybody in the electronic music world. And in the non-electronic music world, 07, who is one of my favorite bands. Anyway, cut long story short, I love Jem. We have been speaking for many years, and never really gotten chance to get in the studio until earlier on this year. We wrote a few records together and just really loved who she is as a human being, what she talks about, and kind of how she holds herself as a human. Not only that, she has one of the best voices in the industry. So I really wanted to get her on and kind of talk about her journey into this world we call the music industry. And it was a really interesting podcast. So without further ado, Jem Cooke. Are you a fan of Linkin Park?
Is that the one where they did the documentary about them on Netflix? Because weren't
No, don't think so.
they like a band that people were a bit like sniffy about?
Oh, that's Nickelback.
Oh, sorry. Cancelled.
No, but I think they kind of have a similar thing.
Right. Okay.
But anyway,
I don't know them well enough. Go on.
Okay, I've got their new song in my head. Like, so for people that don't like, I'm sure some people know, but Linkin Park had a band member who sadly killed himself in like 2017, and they kind of were like, we're done now, and they're massive, like stadium headliners all around the world, and then they've just bought a new drummer and the lead singer that killed himself. They've just kind of bought a female in to kind of replace him.
Oh, wow, amazing.
And the new song is so fucking good. It's so good. Cool. And I've got it in my head. So I was just humming it beforehand.
Hum away.
Say that again.
What?
What do you say?
Oh, I said amazing. I'll listen. Hum away.
Oh, right, yeah. Jem Cooke, how are you, mate?
I'm good, honey. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I can't complain right now. Sun is shining. Day of podcast recording. So what more can I ask for?
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
On here.
We met 6 months ago.
I know, which is bonkers because we've been in touch for about 1,000 years.
Yeah. 6 months ago, we got in the studio. I was actually listening to the record we did the other day.
Well, we did about 5, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so. But I was listening to the one that I love. How many records do you write that never hear the light of day?
Well, for a long time, like so many, like the ratio was quite high. But I have the most phenomenal manager. Her name is Janice Brock, and she's actually a publisher. She used to be co-president of Sony ATV years ago. She actually signed me to Sony ATV. And then when she left, we waited sort of careful what I say. We agreed in theory that we wanted to work together, you know, further down the line. So when my deal was up and there was no conflict of interest, we got together. So in her, I have the most phenomenal one-stop shop. She's an amazing manager. She is a publisher by trade. So obviously she just finds homes for everything I write. And also she does, I would say 99.999% of my legal. So she's just the most phenomenal woman. And I'm so lucky to have her. She's like such a game changer in terms of, I've always had a massive repertoire and my output's like quite big as a writer because I'm just obviously writing constantly. But it's really her that really finds homes for everything. And also I'm with Cobalt Publishing, and they, between sort of the London office and their New York one, are amazing with me, and they sort of pitch my stuff constantly, and they do really well.
So explain for anybody that's listening how that whole process works, because I think like it's very easy for us to like, because we know what's going on, but as a songwriter and a singer, explain the pitching process, explain like you write a song, it's not necessarily going to be your song, if that makes sense. So explain that one.
Yeah, so there's sort of different patches of writing for me. The majority is writing for other people. I more often than not will get sent a batch of instrumentals from a producer, and I'll pick a couple and I'm a top liner, so I write lyrics and melody, and I send back my ideas, and more often than not, that's sort of how the song comes together. That's sort of my half. I think as a writer, the greatest problem I've had, and it's a really nice problem to have, but more often than not, I will write something and people will want to keep my vocal on it, which obviously is lovely for, my soul. But as a writer, it does sort of, it can reduce your output, because obviously as a writer, if you're only writing, you're trying to get things, I'm going to
sneeze.
Oh, it went away.
That's the worst thing ever.
So annoying. Oh, la, 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 la. It will come back. So yeah, that's sort of that as a writer can sometimes be a bit like, because you want your output to be as big as possible, but like, of course, it's a really nice problem to have. And then there's the other occasions in which I will write for my, my own project, which I've been doing on and off for years, and then you've got the whole other side of me that doesn't have the bollocks to play it to anyone, and so I sit on it for years, and that's the stuff that doesn't really see the light of day because I'm too scared.
So what is that other project?
Well, I wrote a big body of songs. I went down to Devon Analog early last year.
It's great down there.
Amazing space it literally is like the name suggests. It's got tons and tons of analog, old school synth original ones, and it's just a real playground for producers who are into that kind of thing. And I go down with Brad Ellis, who's one half of The Next Men, and also producer extraordinaire, writer of lots and lots and lots of things, and also another producer called Creed. And I wanted to write this body of work for a really long time, to nutshell the arc of the story. When my husband and I had 2 babies in lockdown, and that journey in itself was its own thing. But then halfway between the 2 babes being born, my husband's dad died very, very suddenly. We also left London. I think the state of the UK really, really bogged me down. I think postpartum journey was a huge thing. And I just really wanted to honor this crazy 3 or 4 years that we had. And I felt like I needed to get it out of my body.
Yeah.
So it was probably my most raw, honest writing I'd done for a while. Not that I don't do that in other things, but there's sort of a fine line that you tread, especially when you're writing for other producers, whereas this was just me and just my thoughts and my
therapy,
art, if you like. And I think that sometimes means you're a bit more anxious about sharing it. So I have shared it with a tiny handful of people, but I think sometimes when it's just for you, your confidence can take a real battering.
What is that? I want to dig deeper into that because it's really interesting. What is it that you're scared about letting out? Is it the people knowing the story, people knowing how you truly feel, you expressing your feelings openly to the public, or is it a success thing? If it doesn't succeed, it means that my therapy, my songs aren't as good as what I thought they were.
I mean, yes, all of the above. It's all your gremlins. It's the voice inside your head that you try not to let win as often as it does. But yeah, it's feelings of self-worth. It's feelings of, it's all right, but like, I don't know it's laying it really, really bare. And then I suppose the process of what I do outside of things like that, it's fast for me, and I think that's why it sometimes works well. I don't overthink it. I will listen to a piece of music, and I'm not boasting. I'm a very fast writer, so it doesn't mean it works every time. I'm not suggesting that I write hits quickly.
every time. Yeah.
But as a writer, I do write very quickly, and I think so often when I'm doing things for people, if they sent me the music and then I send back an idea, don't get me wrong, like obviously some of the time they come back and they're like, this isn't exactly what I was imagining, so then I'll do something else. But as soon as the producer that I'm collaborating with goes, that's it, I'm like, I trust them, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Whereas when it's my stuff, it's like delving into like, is that right? And then still honoring your, trying to keep the integrity of what you're doing and what you're trying to say. But of course, you want things to commercially work. But then on the other hand, I had a big conversation with my husband about it this weekend. It's like, sometimes I just think it's good to just get stuff out. But then you sort of, as an artist, you panic about, well, what if this affects my numbers? What if this writes me off completely? And I just don't think it is necessarily the case. I don't know how much you can fuck up by releasing something that is just what you want to release. And I think that's always been in my head. It took me such a long time to be financially stable in music, and that's a whole other conversation. That I think when you've basically gone 15 years, as I did, with day jobs, always keeping one thing on the other, and hustling, and from music making no money, or very, very little, certainly not enough to give up a day job. When you suddenly do hit a little tide in which you're doing well, it's nerve-wracking to the concern is quite live of wrecking that.
But I want to dig deeper in that. Sorry to butt in, but this is therapy 101. No, because I think it's actually really interesting. I think it's something a lot of people go through, right? In life, not just in this industry, in life, right? I think there's always that like the doubt that we all have, that what if we fail? What if this doesn't work? Blah, 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 blah. But there's always that like really cheesy saying is like, you have to start, right? But I guess like, where does that doubt come from you? Is like, why, when you've had extreme success, like when you're putting all of your cards on the table, when it's just you, like where is that doubt? You're obviously a very successful singer, songwriter, featured artist, all of the above, right? Where is that doubt coming from?
I think people who've worked with me and known me for years and years would sort of agree. I've never really thought that much of myself. But that's not like false humility. It's not. On paper, I can see, and I really feel like that part of me as a collaborative artist has grown in confidence. I think the thing I suppose is I'm more easily knocked when it's just me, because I think when you are doing things with other people, you kind of I sort of, there's a freedom to it. I literally hand it over to my publisher, my manager, and then they actually do the graft of like finding the home. And then I suppose when it's my stuff, that gets overthought quite a lot. And then I suppose the other side of it, where it all comes from, is years ago I was an acoustic singer-songwriter, like without being like silly. I just thought I was going to sit in there. I thought I was going to be like the next Amy Winehouse. So I was going to sit shoulder to shoulder with like Adele and Liliana, blah blah blah. I'm of that like age. I'm older than them, but it was like I was doing that same like acoustic. There was a huge like during the noughties, there was a very well trodden live London circuit that acoustic artists like myself did. and we were kind of all on the same thing, and everyone else sort of popped off around me. I remember getting an email from this has been in the days of MySpace, and this very sweet, well-meaning fan was just like, I just can't believe all this. But she listed all these other people that had like broken through, and she's like, I just can't understand why you haven't. And I was like, me too, love. But it was so I suppose I did use, because I was acoustic and it was all very vulnerable and stripped back. I did, I laid my sort of soul bare. I used to gig sort of 2 or 3 times a week, just all around London, or I did a lot in Europe as well. And I suppose when you've done all of that as well, and then not to say, I mean, I think that stuff was great. And I had 4 or 5 like EPs or albums, whatever you want to call them, that I recorded, and I used to travel around and I would flog them on the road, and I did quite well with that. And but yeah, I suppose that was the last time I felt like I really was like honest, because it was like I was narrating my life all through my 20s and my early 30s. And then because I always did the electronic stuff, but it was very much, I did it because it was what I was listening to, it was what I was partying to, and it was the people I was hanging around with. So when it first started, it actually first originated with 2 of my friends who were based in Nottingham, and we just started doing this electronic stuff, and it was amazing, and I just loved it. I used to just go up there and get a bit high and sort of sit in this little duvet cave that they made for me in one of their rooms, and we just used to stay up all night just making these amazing tunes. And then it was actually Matt Tolfrey who originally got hold of that project, and sort of he introduced me to like Lee Curtis and Seth Troxler and the Vision Quest sort of crew. And then through that I met Kate Simcoe, and it was that Go On Then that was probably the first electronic undergroundy thing that sort of popped off. And then sort of since then I just sort of just carried on writing, but again it was just sort of through meeting people socially, and then obviously cut to
here we are.
And then
that was 2012. Go On Then, yeah.
So that was by the time it was released, but I think I wrote it like 2009 maybe.
So I guess like realistically, if you like ask your younger self, like
I'm gonna cry.
was the goal to be that Adele, Lily Allen?
Yeah, I think I'm quite sensitive to what's going on at the time. And so I think the one thing, so I grew up in a studio house. My dad's a composer for film and TV and an incredible multi-instrumentalist.
I hate those people.
Phenomenal, I know. He's worked very hard since he was very young to be that good. But my first session was when I was 3 in his studio. So I've really grown up in that environment. So I think from basically being a session singer since I was really, really small, I'm a good mimic. So I think I'm I sort of absorb what's going on around me. So I think I think at the time, because it was what I was, loving, I was a female singer-songwriter. And then if you're going to, which is one of the hardest, I mean, I'm sure everyone would agree that, lots of different genres of music are hard to break through in. But I think being a female singer-songwriter to really, really, really hit, come to the top is hard, because it's
brutal.
A lot of very, very talented, there's still just skrillions of really, really great female vocalists with incredible voices, great writers, and it's a slog. It is so hard, and you have to graft and graft and graft, and even then it doesn't, guarantee.
Doesn't necessarily work.
In terms of like what I aspired to be, I grew up like listening to Carole King and Fleetwood Mac, and that was sort of from my parents' music, and I actually, a lot of stuff I sang was very jazzy at its root. I just kind of, it's whoever you're aspiring to be at the time. And I think, in the noughties, obviously Amy and Adele coming through, and Lily. Kate Nash I just thought was so wonderful. I ended up meeting her. I ended up living with her PA at one point. She was just such a babe. And there was just such a scene of which I actually was quite a big part, but just not, just nobody else knew.
Well, I think that's the tough thing, isn't it? And it's actually similar in our world now, right? In the electronic world, it's like there's so many people that just behind the scenes that are like slogging away,
Yeah.
and it doesn't necessarily hit for everyone.
No.
I don't think there's any real reason why, right?
No.
It's just purely how life is. However, with all the knowledge that you have now, with everything that you've learned over the years, with how you've kind of navigated your life through music and life, like I'm a firm believer that you can make something successful if you want it to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that there's sort of, I mean, wouldn't want to say it as a blanket rule, but I think the difference between people who do crack through and those who don't are the people who stop. And I really understand why you stop, because it's hard. It's really, if I could have done anything else, I would have. I tried other things. I worked in advertising. I mean, I was a PA in advertising, so it's not like I was doing, and I was my bosses described me as passable, but we just all really got on.
That's so brutal.
I know, it's possible, but I think they just like sort of hanging me around. I don't think I was particularly good at my job.
We're all replaceable though. That's the scary thing, right?
Everyone's expendable, but I think people underestimate if you can just be nice to be around. I think that's quite a long way.
But I think art is the only way that you're not replaceable. But yes, there's another artist, but realistically, unless you're emulating somebody else, there's no one else as unique as you, realistically.
That's true, and that is a wonderful freedom, or not, depending on where you're sort of.
It can be such a negative industry, right? I think it can be, and like I think it's really good to talk about. And I'm not necessarily saying the industry is negative, but the effect that it has on you as a human being. Because I can only speak for myself. It's like I'm going through the album project right now, and you have issues with teams, labels, and all of the above. And when you're putting literally your heart and soul into something that you believe is literally the best music you've ever made in your life, and something's not working, right? Or
totally. And the worst thing is not so much someone coming back to you and saying it's shit. The worst feeling is when it's just silence.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, how bad is it? Like, it's just that feeling of like, you're not saying anything. Okay. Okay. It's that sort of into the void feeling.
Yeah.
Just
I think
feel like you're free falling in a kind of like, oh God, I've got this so wrong.
I'd rather somebody say it's shit.
Yeah, same. Just say, do you know what? This actually isn't your best stuff.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how we can marry
how to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is like the communication and like with my team, I'm so fortunate. Like my management team, like agent team, like they're so on point. And if I'm saying some stuff that they're like, that's like completely not achievable at this moment in time, they'll be like, look, Will, let's be realistic. Like this isn't achievable right now. However, we can work towards that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I had an amazing conversation with a wonderful man, Anton Partridge.
He's the best.
I love him.
Yeah.
Really love him. And I'm not with his label. I've had a release on there with Jess Bays, and he sat down with me and talked about it, and he was like, the thing about this body of work is it's a jump. So what you want to do is be able to take people with you on this journey, and actually it might confuse the sort of, the journey of your and just the development of, because the sound is changing, which is saying it's not about, this is a very exciting thing, but I think with him I will have my first solo record, which will hopefully be at some point next year, and that's off that body of work, which is really exciting. So I'm thrilled that he's sort of part of my sounding block between him and Janice. I feel very lucky to have such a.
But I think that's the thing, is like, obviously this is a business and you have fans, right? And they know you for who you are now, right? But that doesn't mean like the person, the human being that we were yesterday isn't necessarily the human being we are tomorrow, right? And we have the ability to change, and we have, I think, just as artists though, we also have to understand that whoever we turn into tomorrow isn't necessarily what the fans want.
Yeah.
And
It's never bothered me massively, but I really understand you do have to factor that in.
But I think it's also about telling the story.
Yeah, agree.
And I think it's about explaining it. And I've had it so many times with singer-songwriters that I've done sessions with. And I've sat in the studio and been like, what do you want to write? And I think you'd like be able to comment on this. I think going in with an electronic artist, you automatically think you're going to be going and writing a club record, but it's like, what it's like, this is a collaborative thing. Like, what is your actual goal?
Yeah.
And more than half the time, it's like, I want to do my own project.
Yeah.
But they have this feature thing where feature is the like path to success as a singer-songwriter. And for me, I think there's just something really wrong in the industry in that sense of like really amazing artists, like unbelievable artists that can sing amazingly, that can write songs that don't need us as electronic artists, that are almost being held back because writing a top line for a DJ is the easy way in.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, it's such a mixed bag, isn't it? Because you look at somebody like Ray. I mean, she's such an amazing example. Also, like, it's such an amazing example. It's almost
too
not
good.
helpful.
Yeah.
What she did is so unbelievably amazing. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I remember having conversations with people, you know, you don't want to do too many of these, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I don't do features as such.
Yeah.
What a lot of singer-songwriters, female vocalists particularly, don't know is that when you do a feature, when it comes to neighbouring rights and back-end stuff, it's actually worth a lot less. So just a little tip for anyone going forward. So you want to be co-primary all the time. It's always times, not feature. And that's lots of it. I think also education around the back end of music, how it's put together, neighbouring rights, master rights, publishing rights. So many people are so uneducated on it, and other people are relying on them being uneducated. And this is where I'm very fortunate with the environment in which I grew up in, and also the team I have around me now. There's just like, there's no stone unturned, and there's nothing that's not negotiated beforehand, because the people I've got looking after me and myself really know what's up. I've forgotten what the beginning of that.
It was more so talking about singer-songwriters kind of go into the like the world of DJ world, feature world.
Yeah, I mean, I think my thing was always like try and do both, and then I suppose when the collaborations work, because I just like, it's going back to what I said before about when you've spent so many years not being able to support yourself, and then suddenly you can. You just sort of go, it's not that, let's not overthink this, let's just keep it coming out. And the other thing I did to take myself off the hook for, you know, not doing an album, there's still, everything I write is still in part narration of my life. Don't get me wrong, there's still where it's just for the like pilly, let's come up in a club, have it be really lovely and tingly. But you know, a lot of it is me being very honest about my life. Breathe was written about a very profound ayahuasca journey I had, and that was such a life-changing moment for me, and the song represented it. So it really did change my life, that thing, and that was absolutely repping what was going on for me at the time. And thank goodness for it, because you know, only through being that honest and that vulnerable, you've got to stay or prepared to be vulnerable, because actually that's when the magic comes, that's when the connection comes. Because when you're, I mean, I know breathe is like, it's ambiguous, it could totally be interpreted in many different ways, but for me it wasn't. I've had so many messages over the years about that song, people literally talking about how it like talked them in off a ledge, literally. And it, that you can't you can't fake that. That's such a like guttural, emotional, like it's almost quantum physics connection where it's just we're all entangled, and only through pure honesty and pure vulnerability can you sort of tap into that bonkers magic that it's just it's sort of it's tangible but like undefinable. You can't go into a room and fake it. It's only through those really honest moments.
I think when those moments happen, when you get those messages, I think that truly takes out all kind of doubt of, and it also, you forget about everything else when it comes to like, has this record been successful? Like it truly brings it down to what it actually is, and it's just art, and people heal through art without sounding wishy-washy and like hippy dippy, but it's true. Like, how many times when you were a kid did you put on a record and cry to it? If you know what I mean. Like, how, like, what else gives you that emotion?
That rush. I know, it's so true. And I have been completely honest, I often have like quite a complicated relationship with music, where I go through periods of time where I just don't listen to anything because I'm sort of humming on such a sort of wobbly frequency that I just don't want to feel it. And music's the quickest way to get it out of your body. Or it sort of taps into nostalgia, or it reminds you of something else. Or I do have like times where I can't listen to it. But then when I do, I just feel so much better. And so it's just sort of, it's good for your body. It's good for your body, and it is healing. It's just, I am one of those people who fights what's good for me more often than.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's uncommon. Like, I know when I eat right and when I exercise and when I meditate and blah, 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 how much better I feel.
Yeah, it's so easy as human beings to kind of deny that, right? As ourselves. We know what's good for us. We know, like, talking to people, therapy, we know all of this is good. We know going to the gym and stretching and eat, like, yet there's so many times we just deny that of ourselves, and it's so strange that we do that.
Yeah, it's like rebelling against an invisible force. It's and it's you. You're the only person you're affecting is you.
But I think it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning with like not releasing the body of work, right? It's like sometimes we know, like, let's talk about therapy, let's talk about all those things that's actually difficult to go through. We know it's difficult to go through these. We know the outcome is probably going to be positive, but we have to go through that difficult part of it until it gets to that point where, just like going to the gym, go to the gym for the first 2-3 months and it sucks. But it's eventually, in 10 years time of going to the gym, you look great and you feel healthy.
So it was the classic, the only way out is through. That's all. When that album that I was talking about, when the week before I was due to go to the studio, I had a complete flap, and I rang them and I cancelled the whole thing, and just had a complete panic about it, because I was like, I just don't even start it. And then mercifully I phoned them the next day and they were so nice to me. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. and Tristan, who's the amazing chap who owns it, he was just like, Jem, we get it. This is not uncommon. It's still available. But yeah, it was that preempting what I have basically done, which is like, I don't want to do it and then not put it out. And then here I am 18 months later. But it will come out slowly, steadily, starting with that one song with Anton.
Anton's great. I love Anton. He used to, his team used to run my label, and they're a great crew. Love them to bits. I want to talk about that moment when music became full-time and successful for you. Because I think it's a moment that obviously we kind of blasé it, right? Because we're in it and it's never enough when we're in it, and it's how do we get more and how do we grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. But I think cherishing that moment when it first happens.
It was amazing.
What was it? Talk me through it.
So it was in 2018, and I think the year before my deal with Sony ATB, my publishing deal, had finished. And I think we just sort of agreed not to pick up the option. I just couldn't. I was so skint. I just couldn't even afford to write. I couldn't. There was just no money anywhere from music, and so mercifully my deal was up, and they didn't pick up the option, which is great. And then we went into 2018, and my hubby and I, he had a big career change the year before as well, so we were both a bit like, and then at the beginning of 2018, I took a day job that I think I was only meant to be in for a month, but I ended up staying there for 9 months. And as a human, it was so good for me, because basically I went in as like a PA to this quite small production, like movie production company, and it was with a friend I used to work with in advertising. And because I was only meant to be there for a month, I just tried my luck. I gave them a ridiculous hourly rate, thinking they'd say no, and then they said yes. And my job was fundamentally planning parties for the office. So like, I can do this.
You could do this with your eyes closed.
It was so fun. And so I just planned parties basically for 9 months and just flapped about the office. It was so easy and so fun. And then because I was so busy and because the money was great, it whittled out all the shit. It whittled out all that. I spent so much of my career sitting in studios waiting for people to turn up.
Yeah.
And that is one of my bugbears. I grew up a session singer. So my dad drilled it into me that if you don't just turn up when the sessions, that you're there half an hour before, you pee before, you need to be ready to sing at call time, not arriving. So that I just have never understood why anyone else wouldn't be exactly the same way. And it's terrifying how many people just think that it just is so offensive.
I agree. No, I agree. I feel exactly the same.
I hate it. So now there's a very tight window when I go into studios. It's like, you've got me from here till here. You decide what you want to do in that time. It's totally fine. If you want to go for lunch, if you want to be late, if you want to go early, but this is my window and I'll be here for that time. But God, sorry, I keep digressing. What was I saying?
We were talking about the moment success happened for you.
Oh yeah. So this job, because I was so busy and the money was great, it just meant I couldn't afford to do any of the sort of do it for the, pay your dues, blah, blah, blah. It's like I've been paying my dues for like,
long enough.
15 years by that point, probably more actually, but we'll just say 15 for the sake of the story. And so I think in that year, Breathe was one of like 10 vocals, which, bearing in mind like how many songs I write, just, I normally do that in a week. It's kind of, it just whittled out all the shit. I only made time and space for things that were paying me in music up front, or that I just felt so strongly about. I had to do it. I remember actually writing, so the job was in the old St. Martin's College building, just in Holborn, and I remember it's just the most incredible building, and I would be like in the office thing, and then I would run up to the roof and write songs like in my lunch break in this like old cinema room, like with the flappy down seats, and literally like demoing things and just sending voice notes to people and then getting it signed off. Then I would go to, because this was before I was set up to record at home, then I would bomb over to West London, record like a big, bunch of them, as and when I could. In fact, it must have been way more vocals than that. But I was doing things that people paid me for. But Breathe obviously was one of those songs, because I actually originally wrote it for Cristoph. And I just would go to West London and then I'd come back to Hackney where I lived. So it was a very full-on 9 months, but it whittled it all down. I did Buggin with Hot Since 82 that year. I just did some records that I loved. I did Damien Lazarus Into the Sun that year, I think. Oh no, maybe that was the year after. That was the year after I was pregnant.
You did A Whole Lot of Love. You did Buggin. You did Breathe. Yeah. You did... Yeah, that was it, 2018.
Yeah, see what I mean? It was really small. On The Whole Lot of Love, I just did it myself because we just wrote it, Eddie Jenkins and I. And it got a friend of mine who was an editor on Love Island, I think. He got it on there one, and we were like, quick, let's make it available just in case it gets any traction. So yeah, you can see like the output was like pretty small. There were other records, but I just didn't have my name on them.
But they're all fucking great records.
Yeah, and so then when Breathe was originally done for Cristoph, and then I sort of just forgotten about it, and then I just got a phone call from Mick at Prida who said, Ministry want to sign it. The Camelphat boys have sort of co-produced it with Chris. Let me send it to you. And then it all just went blah, blah, blah. And the wonderful thing is, because it all happened so quickly, so it actually got released before I was copyright control. So that was what was so game changing about it for me in that moment. Because I kept saying to like my husband's parents, they were very sweet, like, oh, do you think you'll sign a new publishing deal? And I'm like, no, because what I want to do, this is like the dream scenario, it probably never happened, but what I want to do is write a hit while I'm copyright control, because then that helps me going forward. Anyway, blah blah blah, it happened. So we went from, and I was at that day job still when it happened and it came out, and I just remember speaking to my boss just saying, I think I need to hand in my notice. And he was like, good, amazing. Because he was like, actually, I can't afford to keep you on this rate anyway. So it all worked out brilliant. And it was right before Christmas. So yeah, just everything changed. Suddenly I had a few publishing companies sort of coming to me.
Yeah, November the 16th, 2018.
Yeah, that was a very lovely run up to Christmas because I just had choices, and I went with Cobalt and they were amazing. And it was just suddenly, I was like, we're all right. We're all right for the first time in my career.
How does that feel?
It was amazing. It's like my mum saw me right after it happened when I went home for Christmas, and she was like, your whole body looks different.
Yeah.
Like your shoulders have come down. You're like, she's like, you literally look like you're breathing differently. Hey.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Yeah, it was a real moment. We really, really treated ourselves for about a year, if I'm honest. We slid pretty like perfectly into having babies and the pandemic. We obviously didn't know. I think Ols and I, through various gigs I was doing abroad and appearances and then lovely holidays that we'd sort of agreed to, we were kind of just off and on the raz and on holiday for about 9 months, and then I got pregnant with Alfie sort of towards the end of that summer, and then he came the following April, which when we were obviously in lockdown. When I look back, so I remember in that year going, God, we're being a bit too carefree, but then in hindsight I'm like, thank God we were, because it was just like
kids change everything.
Back to like kids and
COVID
pandemic, it was just like, thank goodness we had that time.
How has kids changed your perspective on your career and life generally?
I'm very grateful that they arrived after I had a kind of significant change.
Yeah.
Because, well, it was a big part of my journey to having kids, actually, because I think for a long time I was like, being completely honest, I couldn't get pregnant. And then when I was getting pregnant, I couldn't hold on to them.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, I sort of realized, and it was a big part of like the Breathe journey as well, that I think part of me, I think my body, whether or not I consciously knew it, which I don't think I did, my body wasn't letting me get pregnant because I think I was so frightened of doing that without my career being in a certain place. And I realized it was my greatest fear. And I remember saying to Ollie, I was like, I can't have a baby just because I don't know how to kick my career forward. I can't do that to my kid. I won't put that on them. Sorry, I'm just going to move because the sun is fine. And I just sort of, I realized that I had a lot of work to do on my brain. And so I was very fortunate that I did do that work, because I think when they arrived, I was so ready. The pandemic for us with Alfie was amazing because he was just such an easy baby, and we just thought we were really good parents. We were literally nailing this. When we found out we were having Rocky, so they're 11 months apart, my kids.
Oh, wow.
So when we found out we were having Rocky, we were like, yes, peace, we can do this again. But then Rocky was born and it was like, oh, no, you're a completely different kid. And this had nothing to do with us. You've been sent to show us humility.
It's always the way. I've got friends that have like had one and it's like that. And then they're like, oh, we're probably going to have another. And I was like, it's going to change.
Yeah,
Like,
when the little nut bag arrives.
Yeah.
And also 2 may as well be 20. It's just such a game changer because it's just like no one's got free hands ever. But in terms of like, what was your question, darling? Sorry.
It's more so like, how does it change your like aspect of like your view on your career and kind of does it change what you're doing it for?
Yeah, definitely. So there are days, obviously, as we all have, where you're just not sure, like, how am I going to get it out? And things like just being ready for their future, investing in their future. And I remember sort of having an aha moment. It's such a pathetic, stupid thing to say, but it's just like when you're on the go all the time, I often feel guilty for like my kids because I'm just like, gosh, are we spending enough time with them? Or like when we are spending time with them, are we like, really with them
in it?
And then it's just things like we took them to India last Christmas and it was so amazing. And it was there that I was like, if not for this, then what else? Like you're doing it, you hustle hard so that when you are together, you can do these like amazing things. And it is all, for them, they do become front and center when it's hard. I mean, it's not all about them. I do my music because it absolutely helps me mentally. I have the greatest respect for any stay-at-home parent because I realized really quickly I could not. Oh my God, my belly.
I can hear that.
That was so loud. I'm fasting and apparently my body doesn't like it. Sorry about that. I'm going to start that again. So we don't have the so I have the utmost respect for any full-time stay-at-home parent because I realized very quickly that it was not something I could do. Not because I don't absolutely adore my children, because I love them, I'm obsessed with them, but no day at work in any career, in any job I've ever had is as hard as full-time parenting to me. Some people are just like born to do it and they're just so patient, so beautiful and so loving. And I am all those things in bursts. I'm just not, I could not do it every day, day in and day out. There's a very funny line from a comedian called Ali Wong who says, I have to work very hard so I can earn enough money so I don't have to take care of my children. It's true. We've had them in like full-time nurseries since they were quite small because I had to go back to work. It was great because I set myself up to record from home and my going back to work is very different and I totally know that. Me going back to work means I want to try and deliver 2 songs a week for that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to be anywhere 8 till 6. I could do it all from home. And
it's very different though. And this is the thing for me is like our careers, yes, we're not the 9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
But, and I'm not saying everyone does when they're 9 to 5, but when you can never shut the laptop. You can never go.
No, there's no pension.
There isn't, and there is for some people, right? There is, and
because of your catalogue, that's why I'll never stop writing because every year it builds, and it's just like a nice steady incline. So in terms of those foundations just get laid every year, and they only get built upon. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't
totally.
I mean, touch wood, but I haven't had like it's only gone just gently the right way.
But I think that's 99% of this industry. It gradually builds and builds and builds and builds rather than you have that absolutely like, unless you're Calvin Harris, right? Or unless you're Dua Lipa or something like that, where it's like luck hits, right? And it all kind of falls into place. But that's the one thing that's always scared me about having kids, and why I've always said like, no, I don't ever want kids, is because for me it's like that. I know how much I'm not at home.
Totally. It will depend very much on like how your partner feels about it.
Yeah.
Whoever's away.
But I think it's also financially, right? I think it's like yes, we have successful careers and we earn reasonably good money, but I also have to be away to earn money.
I know. I mean, I think that's probably the one bit of my career. I mean, I would love to get an agent. I just haven't got the This year's been a particularly challenging one for us. Just we've been moving house and all sorts of big stuff's been going on, and I just haven't pursued it aggressively. And I actually just decided at the beginning of this year just to stick a pin in the live thing just for a moment, because my kids are little and my husband's I couldn't have married anyone else. He's just such a dude, and he's just constantly wanting to kick me out the door and go on the road, because he's just like, this is what you're meant to do. And I did do a lot last year, but I sort of just, with the kids being so small, they're 3 and 4 now, so it's definitely less of a thing. But the idea of being married to me is my worst nightmare. I'm so glad Ollie's not a musician. I'm so glad he's not a DJ. I'm so glad we're not in this one, because he has always been, he takes the piss out of me if I go on the road for anything. He's like, enjoy your hollybobs. Because it is anywhere that you are not being hung off by 2 tiny people, it is a holiday.
Yeah, I was talking to my girlfriend about this the other day, because I just did Australia for like 3 days. So I went to Australia, did 2 shows, and then came back. And she works really fucking hard in what she does, but she was just like, well, you've just sat on a plane for the last 3 days. It's not that hard, is it?
I bet you were in the nice seats, Well.
Pardon?
I bet you were in the nice seats.
No, I wasn't actually. I wasn't. No, because I have this thing.
I played Australia because I'm not going in the cheap seats.
That's the thing for me, is actually, no disrespect to Australia, but I've been touring there 10 years and it's never got good for me. And I know why it's not got good for me, because I haven't had a hit record that hits over there.
Right.
And I did this purposely to show my team that, not my team actually agreed with me, but it was like, I'm now no longer doing that until it works for me, because I'd rather spend time at home in the studio. I'd rather spend time with my friends and family or my girlfriend. And you know what? Like, we travel every fucking weekend.
Yeah.
If I can't afford to be in the expensive seats whilst traveling, doing that show, then I'm not going.
No, it's so long. It's so long. It's too long.
Yeah.
It's too long. And it's, but yeah, hopefully maybe one day we'll have a mega Australian down under hit together. We can both fly in the nice seats.
You know what? I'd rather a mega hit in America.
I don't care. I don't care where the nice seats.
Russia, we're going there.
Apart from that, maybe. But no, I wouldn't. As long as my seat goes all the way back, take me where
you're good. Yeah. No, I it does get like that, especially when you get older. It's like, I think we can sound very like privileged and very bougie by saying stuff like that, but realistically, the amount we travel, it's
you're
like,
doing a lot. Totally. I've only flown business once, one way, and it was that year after Breathe, and we got it on a companion voucher, and it was an insanely, cheap deal. So I don't even feel like I did it properly. But we flew back from Mumbai business. My husband was really ill on the flight. He had a terrible migraine, and I had what I called mega seat, because I was in the middle, and then the next one was empty. So I just had my fingers on both buttons and was like, this giant bed, while the whole cabin was asleep, and I just kept drinking champagne and talking to the stewardess. And then I was like, can you just bring the duty free? And I literally bought the entire duty free trolley off her. So I was just like, this is the first time I've ever been able to do this. You know how long I've wanted to do this? And then this other lady came up from economy. She was like, I just wanted to hear who the lady in business was buying up all the duty free. It's me.
Life goals.
It was pathetic. I bought loads of Diptyque minis and Joe Malone minis and chocolate and things and stuff and la la la. I must have drank solidly for about 9 hours, just la la la. So it's good coming into Heathrow at 9 a.m. all discombobulated. But Ollie actually said at the end, because we'd gone away for like 3 weeks, we were in India, and it was just the most amazing holiday. He's like, this is the happiest I've seen you all holiday.
All holiday.
On the return flight, just in a nice seat. Couldn't believe it. I was like,
I love that.
I was nearly 40. That was my first business flight.
No, I think it's like, I've actually never paid for one. I've always upgraded. Like,
going off, William.
No, I don't, because I refuse to pay for it. Because
so you need the upgrades, really, don't you? That sort of
yeah, like we fly enough that we get points, so we can then upgrade. But like,
nice.
I'd love to be able to pay for it.
Oh, I know. No,
I'd love to be able to.
Totally. I mean, yeah, we definitely didn't pay for it. It was just a fortunate combination of Amex points, I think.
Yeah.
And companion vouchers and
Love Amex.
things.
Love it. So for anybody listening that is in that singer-songwriter world, how do you make it?
God, I wouldn't like deign to tell anyone the answer to that, because I still don't know what gets me from today to tomorrow, other than just carry on, just keep going. Because the only way you're going to stop is you're definitely not going to crack through when you stop. And I really understand why people do stuff. I think so. The best bit of like reassurance I got, so that around that time where I had to take a day job again, and I really felt, because I'd not for a while, and I really felt like I'd failed. And this lovely recruitment lady said to me, she was like, "Jem, you haven't failed. You're just doing whatever it takes in order to keep facilitating your dream. And right now, what you need is money. So you're making money so that you can afford to write when you can and record when you can, because that's fundamentally what you want to do. But you still have to pay your mortgage." And actually, that was such a, like, it really resonated with me, because it was like, oh, actually, she's so right. I'm not giving up. I haven't stopped music. I have to earn money right now. So however I do that is one thing. So that would be what the only thing I'd say to anyone is: do whatever it takes to keep facilitating that dream, commit to the dream, and don't feel too proud to just keep going. It takes a long time to maybe completely be stable financially in music, and that, again, that's a whole other layer of conversation to do with unfair splits on how people pay writers, particularly if you're quote unquote just a writer. You are really,
it's terrible.
It's really shit. It's so bad, and it must change. I know everything's been chipped away at.
How do you think it can change?
How?
Yeah.
When the majors undo all the shit.
Do you think it's the majors? I know the majors have a part to play, but
wasn't it you, like, I don't want to say anything that gets me into trouble, but I'm pretty sure when Spotify and all that, when Napster was the one that they left behind, all these deals got agreed, and they were all made on the master rights, and then they threw in the publishing
willy-nilly
as an afterthought, thinking that these things would never work, and of course they did. And then they were all hiding behind NDAs as well. So yeah, I have umbrage.
I just also think, though, it's everyone's shouting about it, but no one's fixing it. And I think the only people to fix it is actually the artist.
But we don't have the keys. We can shout, but we can't. Do you mean in terms of, like, you just can't have my song without it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I have been fortunate enough to be part of that.
Yeah.
But it's getting across that line, because I've been quite sort of, what's the word, solid about, if somebody wants to take my vocal off, that's fine, but we will need to talk about
points
master rights for me, because otherwise it's just not worth it. Why would I
for nothing? Yeah,
this whole body of work for nothing? Like, it's not what I might as well not be doing this. Like, no,
I totally agree. And I think I think the one issue, I had this, and I've spoke about this on the podcast with regards to my album, and I went into every session going, we're just splitting everything equal, right? Like, anybody that's in this room, like, unless you're literally twiddling your thumbs and not working, then get the fuck out. But anything that we do is split equally. However, when I signed my deal, I then realized that I actually don't even have control over my percentage.
Right.
Because
on which?
So let's say, for instance, you have 80, 30, 80, 20 split, right? let's just say this for example. On
Between
that,
master and publishing.
just master. Publishing equal split for everyone. For me, like that's just always the way.
Okay,
but on the master, right? So I then go, right, okay, so my 20% gets split equally between.
So you're talking about 80-20 as in label artist.
Yeah, label owns 80, artist owns 20, right? And my thing was like everyone gets equal split.
Yeah.
So if there's two people on the record, like
that
have written the record and produced it, and everybody that's involved gets. So if there's two people, 10% split, whatever, right? I then propose this to the label, going, go do the deals. They're like, well, no, you can't do that. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, we recoup on your 20%.
Yeah.
So when you start splitting that out equally, we're not, everybody else isn't behind cost. Everybody else is behind like straight away.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's,
but you've got 80% of the record.
You've got 80% of my record and this 20% is mine. And they're like, no, we can't do it. And I'm like, well, just put everyone behind costs.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, we don't want to do this. And it's just like, and I think that's the issue, is that I didn't know this. And I'm 20 years into this career. I didn't know that's how it worked.
Yeah.
And for me is like, it's just that's wrong. But I also think we're coming of the days where labels are just being, we don't need labels nowadays so much.
Yeah. It sort of depends on the label, I guess. I think labels to me in the traditional sense are meant to bring money and marketing ideas. And I guess if you're not seeing much of either from a label,
what's the point?
Then I would say that's not necessary. And if they're gonna, come with the first people you want to meet in any label and a release is the marketing team, because if they're not interested or engaged or having a plan, it's sort of, or throwing a ton of money at you, then that helps as well, because then it's up to them to recoup it. But it's I guess that's the fortunate thing about my situation, is whilst I'm published, I'm not signed to a label exclusively, which actually I think when I was younger I was like, oh, when am I going to get a record deal? And then I just watched lots and lots of people who did get signed, and more often than not it stalled their career. It suddenly was like I learned, whenever someone said, oh, we've been signed, I suddenly quietly internally was just like, oh, fucking hell, it's not the answer you think it is. People think, oh, I've been signed finally. More often than not, it's for shitty money. It goes on where they say they're developing you, but they're not. And then they just slow down. This isn't a sweeping, sorry, this sounds very sweeping. In my experience with lots of people, I have noticed in the vast majority that has been what has happened. It doesn't always happen, of course. But I suppose for me, with my experience and other people that I saw that journey, I got less and less worried about having an exclusive label. And actually, as I got older, and then when things like Breathe happened, just meant I can say yes to or no to anything I want. I'm not at the mercy of a graph at the end of the year where the accounts team are going, oh, but she hasn't recouped that. But it doesn't
matter.
Some do great, some do all right, and it doesn't matter, because I'm not sort of my belly. I've got to eat a banana.
You need to go eat, girl. You need to go eat.
Wow.
Okay, so coming out next year, we've got a new album from Jem Cooke, right?
Yes, at least a single by single by single. I might just do that and just trickle them out and then attach them to an album. Maybe that would be the journey. But yes, definitely my first solo record will be coming out
next year.
Good company. Sorry not to jinx it. Anton, if you're listening, I've announced it. It's called White Hot.
I love it.
Mum rage.
Mum rage? What's mum rage?
You'll see.
I don't know if I will.
About a really, really deep rage that can come over you as a parent. I was not ready for it. It's all tangled up in your own journey as a child, or like as becoming a parent, as a human. Just things trigger you that you just were not expecting.
In what sense? Give me an example.
So I think the best example, like, is well, not necessarily mine, but like when kids. Oh, what is a good one that was going to be like clear? Just sometimes when kids are just like completely melting down, or they're behaving in a certain way, and you are not the patient, kind version of yourself that you imagine you would always have been, and you can just lose it, or even if you don't lose it, but you just are so angry you just need to sort of step outside. And one thing I realized I was doing is it's almost like so you have your own triggers of when you were a child that maybe a grown-up was behaving that way with you, and something in you is actually trying to protect your younger self by going, no, don't do that, because then you grow up, someone going, no, no, don't do that, or something like along those lines. And actually the irony is that you end up becoming the person you're trying to protect them from by shouting at them. It's a fucking minefield. So much to think about. I've read so many books. There's a lady called Philippa Perry who wrote a book called The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read and Your Children Will Be Very Grateful That You Did, or something to that. And it's all about this journey and about how like children are just terrifying mirror back onto your own stuff in your head. Oz and I continue to work quite hard to figure out how to regulate our own emotions so that we can help our 3 and 4 year old regulate theirs. Do you know it doesn't all develop till you're like 21? Like this,
it's mad, isn't it?
Cerebral doobie doo.
Well, it's also like it's hilarious when you start seeing your parents in yourself.
Oh, it comes for all of us.
It's the scariest thing.
I love my parents very, very much. But yeah, you just one day you're like, oh, there they are.
Yeah. Welcome to the world.
And also it makes you want to hug your parents and apologize.
And this is also one of the reasons why I talk about not wanting to have kids, because my parents were fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And like they still are. And for me, it's like, I don't know if I can be that good. Like, I don't know if I can be that parent that can be that good to my child, because they were so good. And like, in my eyes, and of course not everyone will say this, but in my eyes, like, I've got the best parents. And for me to like, I'm very competitive. I've got to beat that. And how the fuck do I beat that? And I can't. So I was like, accept my my battles, and I've lost that one.
I think it's very important not to suffer twice. I think don't worry about something that hasn't happened yet. However, when it comes to having babies, I think you're right to be as honest as you can about fears and anxiety about becoming a parent. Because once you're in it, you are in it.
Yeah, there's no getting out.
No, there's a very deep line in the sand that you cross, and you literally watch it evaporate behind you.
It's amazing what they do to people, though. Like, it is genuinely amazing. Yeah. Like, I've seen, like, I don't know if my manager will listen to me, but he will hate me for saying this. But like, in the time we've been working together, like, he's had kids, and I love hearing him moan about them and all of that, and it's great. But like, it's changed him as a human being. It's made him more loving. It's made him be more affectionate, be more emotional, and I think there's something beautiful that when, especially in this industry where on the business side of it, there's no emotion, there's none of that, if you know what I mean. And I think seeing that kind of grow into somebody is special.
Definitely. I mean, I was already a gibbering wreck before babies, but it definitely makes you worse, softer. Everything makes you cry. Like, I was never that into like animals or pets particularly, but now if there's like a dog in my house, I'm like, you can't sleep downstairs. Come and get to bed with us. It's fine. Take him anywhere you want. Have him upstairs. I can't bear it. Every living thing. I flicked a spider off the sofa the other day, and I swear I like dinked his leg, and I was just like, oh my god.
You're still thinking about it now. That's the crazy thing.
I was like, buddy, I'm sorry. Every living thing, you just totally complete waste of space.
Well, mate, we've just done over an hour. Thanks so much for coming on. I know we could probably talk forever, but I don't want to bore people.
Bunch.
I've loved this conversation. Thanks so much for being so honest. I think a lot of people get a lot from it. I can't wait to be in the studio again. And I will see you very soon.
Thank you, darling. Love you loads. Thank you again for having me on. It's very wonderful.
Big love. See you soon. Mwah. And that's a wrap. Big love to Jem for coming on. Loved it. Go follow her. Go listen to her music. She's amazing. Till next time, people.